Chapter 1. I saw her for the first time in late September, on the 22nd day to be exact. The morning fog had dissolved, swept away by brilliant sunlight sent to bless the day and banish all shadows of the past. Rainfall from the night before had cleansed the normally fetid London air, or perhaps the fragrant soap with which I had washed yet lingered, making me believe the city smelled fresh. My clothing was impeccable, my linen freshly starched, my beaver new. I was prepared for this day in dress and thought, resolved to the change it would bring in my life, a new beginning. And then I saw her. I stopped as though struck, my feet unable to move. I inhaled sharply, holding my breath. Could it be? Impossible. But I could never forget the particular play of her countenance, the manner in which her dark curls escaped and twined around the edge of her bonnet, and the way she tilted her head to the side. It could be none other. Across the street stood Elizabeth Bennet, the one woman in this world who, when offered my heart, had cast it aside like refuse. "Come now, Maggie, you must keep up," she called to the maid following her. "The carriage is waiting." "It's the child, ma'am. She squirms so. Give her to me." She reached for the small girl, straightening the cap that had slipped askew on her chestnut-coloured locks. The babe howled in protest. I know. You no longer wish to be carried. You want to walk, but you cannot. The pavement is far too uneven. You might fall and soil your pretty frock. Hush now. We will soon be home, and you shall have your bread and jam." I thought of the last time I had seen Elizabeth in the grove at Rosings Park. The scene seared in my memory. It had been morning then also, but springtime instead of autumn, the earth verdant and blooming with new life. My aunt's numerous, carefully tended beds of lilies had blanketed the grounds with their sweet aroma of Easter. How shocked and hesitant Elizabeth had appeared when I asked her to read the letter I had laboured over all night. For a moment I had doubted she would consent to my request, but when, at last, she took the composition from my hand, I had fled the place with as much dignity as I could summon. And now here we stood in the midst of Hanover Square, on a morning filled with sunshine and promise, over 2 years later. After Elizabeth had refused me with such incivility, had I not moved heaven and earth to escape her presence? I had spent the past years avoiding the very country in which she dwelt. Why, I had even skirted Napoleon's army to reach Naples and Rome. I had tramped through enough ancient ruins to drive me mad. At one point I had sailed for Greece, so great had been my desire to conquer the pain that tormented me. And now it took but one glimpse of her light figure and lovely face to render me as undone as ever. Unknowingly I remained transfixed, so stunned that I forgot where I was and why. I had just walked past one of the reigning obelisks standing guard in front of St. George's Church, my head down, bent on making my way up the broad stone steps of the portico. What made me turn to look across the street? And why should she, of all people, be there at that point in time? "I say, Darce, are you coming?" I started at the sound of my cousin's voice, but I could not break my gaze. She wore a pale yellow dress I did not recall having seen before, a green shawl draped over her arms. I remembered the shawl. Had she not worn that to Easter services at Hunsford Church? How pathetic was I! Even her clothing had taken up permanent residence in my memory. Would she look up? Would she recognize me? At that very moment, as though something greater than ourselves willed it, she raised her head. Our eyes met, and I saw the disbelief that overtook her expression. "The bride is waiting, Darcy," Fitzwilliam called loudly, indicating that we must proceed into the church. "Why are you unsettled? You look as though you've seen a ghost." Instantly I gathered my wits, tore my eyes from her, and determined to enter the sanctuary. Yet, when I reached the nearest great Corinthian column, I could not help but look back. I had to capture one last image. I had time only to see her board a carriage, holding the child close to her breast,